Hey everybody, happy Wednesday evening live tutorial stream. Happy Wednesday. Hope everyone is doing well wherever you are this Wednesday evening. It was another warm and sunshiny day in Dallas. And you know how I extra know it was warm? Because the air conditioning's out in my house. Yeah. So yeah, it's warm inside and outside. Luckily, the air conditioning at Beading is working just fine. But yeah, and of course, it being the middle of summer where everybody's air conditioners are like, screw this noise, I'm gonna break now. The poor sweet AC man can't fit me in until tomorrow morning. So it's gonna be a bit of a, warm and humid night at my house. Maybe I'll just sleep here at the shop. The problem there is the floor, not very comfortable. Been there, done that.
Do you want my futon? You can help me put down my mattress and then there will be plenty of space.
All right, so this evening we have by request of Albie Clay, one of our newer stream viewers, we have a tutorial on beaded fringe coming off of a solid base. Okay, so use a sheet metal. Right, hot night for the wrong reasons. Exactly. I'm wearing like totally flowing linen pants and everything today because when I got dressed this morning, I was like, no touching the skin, nothing touching the skin. Oh my God. It was sticky and gross. So here's hoping that the AC man can work some kind of miracle tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. and fix the thing. It's probably not even a big thing, but since I don't know anything about AC units, I can't fix it myself, which is frustrating. As being someone who tends to fix things myself when I can't fix it myself, it does kind of grate on me a bit. But anyway, so beaded fringe pendant coming off of a solid piece. So I'm going to use a piece of 24 gauge sheet metal for this evening's tutorial. I believe that Albie Clay makes beautiful polymer clay jewelry, and so that's the base that she's thinking of using, but the principle remains the same. Whether your base is polymer clay, metal, wood, pretty much anything that you can drill a hole in is going to work for this. So let's talk tools and supplies for this evening's tutorial. We are going to need some kind of a base. Like I said, I'm using 24 gauge sheet metal. I'm going to use 24 gauge copper. This evening, you're going to need beads, and I used, just for the sake of A, interest, and B, time, I'm using 3 different kinds of beads on my fringe tonight. If you look at the project photo, let's see, there we go. All right, so I've got the seed beads. Those are the kind of darker blue ones. In the photo, I've got bugle beads, which are the long and skinny ones in the photo, and then I've got some crystals on the bottom. So what those look like in real life these are the crystals. So this is just like a 4mm crystal rondelle that makes a nice kind of end to the bottom of our fringe. These are bugle beads. Bugle beads are just long tubular beads, and honestly the reason I'm using these in the fringe tonight, in addition to the fact that it looks cool, is that it saves me, this is about the length of 10 of my seed beads, so it saved me stringing 10 of my seed beads to use one of those. And then these are size 11 seed beads. You can really use any size for this. If you're absolutely a glutton for punishment, you can use something smaller than an 11, like a 13 or even a 15. If you're the other way and you have little to no patience for teeny tiny things, you can go up. You can use a size 6. You don't even have to use seed beads. You can use any beads for this fringe at all. Seed beads are nice for fringy projects because fringy projects do tend to use a lot of beads, and seed beads are relatively inexpensive. They're usually sold in a fairly large package like this, for anywhere from $3 to $8 to $10, which, considering the quantity of beads you get for that amount of money, is very reasonable. If anybody wants to know exactly how many seed beads I used in my prototype, I counted and it was about 200. In addition to your beads, you are going to need, if you want to actually make this into a necklace, which we will do at the end of the tutorial, I'm going to put mine on a little bit of chain. So I have some medium length bronze chain. Clasp, I'm going to use just a basic little S-hook clasp. And then you are going to need some jump rings. You're going to need 4 jump rings. You're going to need 2 to attach the clasp and 2 to attach the pendant. So is, let me use this size. Okay, so that's like a 7mm bronze jump ring. A 5 or a 6 would work just fine. I only have 2 5s, so I'm gonna go with the 7s just for consistency in the project. It's my bronze jump rings there as far as, and then you're gonna need Fireline. We talked about this last week when we did that brick stitch pendant tutorial. So Fireline started out as a fishing product. You can see it still has the Berkeley logo on there with the fish. And if you go to Bass Pro or any other, you know, kind of outdoor store that sells fishing stuff, you will see Berkeley branded Fireline all up in the fishing section. However, at some point, we beaders discovered that this is actually a really awesome thread for seed beading because it's very thin but very, very strong. It's a lot stronger than the nylon thread that most beaders were using before the Fireline kind of jumped on the scene. And the Fireline's a lot more resistant to being cut than the nylon is. So when you're using things like crystals, and also when you're using things like these bugle beads, since the way these are formed is, you know, they're basically cut, the edges of these bugle beads can get very sharp. And so using something like the Fireline that's a lot stronger, more resistant to being cut, is going to, of course, increase the longevity of your work. Comes in several different sizes. The most popular for most beaders is the 6 pound, and but there are smaller, there are larger, but 6 pound is what you're going to find most of the time in the beading world. As far as tools go, you're going to need a size 10 beading needle. Okay, as far as beading needles go, that's one of the bigger sizes available, so size 10 beading needle. You're going to need a nice sharp scissors or snips. Your Fireline is difficult to cut and it will dull out your scissors over time, so don't use a really expensive scissors for this. I like the industrial thread snips because they're really easy to replace. They're $5 each retail, or you can get them on Amazon for even cheaper than that. You are going to need a metal shears. I've got my Euro Tool metal shears here. We all know I love a template of some sort. You can freehand if you want. I'm terrible at that. So I'm going to use an oval template for my project this evening. You are also going to need pliers. When we get to our jump rings, you are going to need your chain nose pliers, preferably 2 pairs of them, and a wire cutter for cutting your chain. Alright, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to start out by moving everything off of my work surface, and I'm going to start out by drawing my shape on my metal and cutting it out with my shears. Oh wait, there's another tool that you need. See, I should read my own tool list. You are going to need, for making your holes, either a rotary tool with a drill bit. The drill bit needs to be big enough that it makes a hole that will accommodate your size 10 beading needle, so that is obviously totally going to work there. This is much thinner even than this. If you don't have a rotary tool, you can also use a hole punch for that. So now I'm going to go ahead and start with my metal. So I'm going to take my metal, I'm just going to pop it down on my work surface. I'm going to grab a marker, and I'm going to decide what size do I want. I don't want to make it too big because I don't want to take forever. So I'm going to use this oval, and I'm just going to draw. Okay, well, theoretically, I'm going to draw half of that oval on my metal, and I'm just going to make 2 little marks for that halfway point, and then I can take my straight edge It's awesome when you can't even see over the top of what you're doing. You're like, did I do that? Okay, I did that. So then I took my straight edge and I drew across, and I have half of my oval. Okay, we're gonna go with, sure, that works. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take my metal shears and I'm gonna cut that out. So I'm just gonna take my sheet metal, my metal shears, and I'm just gonna cut on my lines. This also brings to mind a couple of other things that I did not put on the tools list, okay? Because we're gonna have to finish the edges of this, so you are gonna want some 320 grit sandpaper and some fine steel wool, all right? And no, I did not put those on the tool list. Yes, those are things you're gonna want if you're gonna make a nice and nice feeling project this evening. So after I've cut this, that's my half circle. All right, it's gonna be kind of sharp on the edges. So we're gonna grab our 320 grit sandpaper and our fine steel wool, and that is how we're going to finish our edges. Also, it's a little bit curly from being cut, and if I had a mallet, I would use that to pound this down. However, my mallet appears to have gone on walkabout. So, BRB. Stupid unreliable mallets. I know, right? Okay, so this is a rawhead mallet. Okay, you could use a nylon or a hard rubber mallet as well. And the reason that this is a desirable tool to have around your workspace for this exact purpose is because it allows me to flatten my metal using the percussive force of the mallet without adding any texture to my metal that I may or may not want. If I were to use a hammer, whether it be a chasing hammer or a household hammer, for this same purpose, chances are I would inadvertently add some texture to my metal which I may or may not want. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish the edges. So like I said, right now these edges are a little bit sharp. Like I'm leery of pressing my finger too hard on this edge because I have fears of being lacerated. Fears, by the way, which are well founded by my many years of cutting myself on random things. So I'm going to take my 320 grit sandpaper. 320, this is 320 wet dry. You could use 320 conventional as well. 320 is a good grit to have around your studio for metal work because it does a pretty good job of smoothing up your edges fairly quickly without leaving a whole lot of scratches that you need to polish away. Okay, so just with a once over on my 320, I'm a lot more confident that this is something, you know, that I could touch without adverse consequences. But to really finish it up nicely, I'm going to take my fine steel wool, and I'm just going to, and this is quadruple zero steel wool. Triple or quadruple will work for this, and I'm just going to steel wool my edges. That is going to give me a really nice smooth edge, something that I have no issues with at all. Like I can pretty much press as hard as I want to on that edge now, and I'm not going to cut myself, which is exactly what we want from jewelry. Nobody likes jewelry that tries to stab them. Nobody. Okay, so now we're going to, because I don't need to like shine that directly at all of you out there. I can turn it off camera. Okay, so now we're going to mark some holes. I'm going to grab my template back because I need a 90-degree mark to kind of keep everything sort of even, Steven. If you take a look at the prototype photo, I did a terrible job. Absolutely abysmal at keeping those holes even. So we're going to try on stream than we did when we were doing the prototype. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my template and I'm going to line that back up. Oh, that's fun. So since my template is so close together, it's like one of these 90-degree lines is for this oval above and one is for the one I'm using. Which is it? Because honestly, it looks like neither. It's that one. Okay, so I'm going to just mark that one. And I'm going to take, are you sure though?
No.
I'll take that straight edge and I'm just going to bring that all the way down. So I've kind of bisected that. May or may not be straight. No, I did not use a protractor on the bottom. We're just going to go with it as it is. Now I'm going to mark my two top holes and I'm just going to kind of go it's like a 1/4 of an inch down, not quite as much as a 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to mark two holes there, two dots that I'm going to turn into holes. That's where my two jump rings are going to go. And then on the bottom, oh wow, that is so incredibly not straight. Not even close to being straight. This is what happens when you're trying to like look at things on the camera instead of in actual, you know, real life. There we go. That's straight. And then I'm going to take my, look how off that was. Like this was the original line that I drew just using the camera to look at it, and this is the actual more accurate line that I drew when I was actually looking down on it. So perspective matters, okay? Don't be all awkward like me. Like put it where you can see it.
Well, if you want things straight.
If you want things straight, it's true. You don't always want things straight. Okay, so now we're gonna start with marking our holes. And I'm just gonna start with my straight edge ruler. I'm just gonna put one of the millimeter markings on my center line. It doesn't even matter which one. And then I'm gonna space. So I'm gonna start with a dot there, and then I'm gonna go every 3 millimeters. And yes, you do want to 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's a little better than I did on my prototype. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it's better. So what I have are all of my holes marked. Now, when I drill these holes, I want to make sure that they're not too close to my border of my metal, because I don't want obviously to blow through my metal with my drill bit, but I don't want them so far away that I have giant pieces of thread showing either. So this I think is a pretty good situation of holes. I'm just going to take my little drilling block, which is just a piece of wood that I don't really care about. That's all it is. And I'm going to knock the thing that is holding my light onto the floor. That's super exciting.
Do you need me to stand there and hold the light?
No, I think I just need to possibly give up on the light for this portion of the broadcast and grab the holder back in time for the sale, because it's like it's down there, and we'll see. I may have to take a safari under the table to grab the clamp for my light, but for now we're gonna go ahead and
viper down.
go ahead and drill this. So I just have my rotary tool with my drill bit, and I have my marks, and I've got my metal just sitting on my wood block, and I'm just going to take my drill bit and I'm going to drill at each hole. There we go. Now, if I were concerned about scratches on the top of my metal, I could take a nail or a centering punch, and I could actually punch a little divot at each hole, and that would make it a lot easier for me to drill. Because if you watch, if I can keep this on camera, which I realize I'm doing a terrible job of, my drill bit's going to kind of walk around a little bit before it finds purchase, and that can lead to my holes not being exactly where my marks are. And so if you take a nail or a centering punch and just drop a little dot on each, a little divot on each hole, then that makes it a lot easier for your drill bit to see. Why don't I do that? Because I'm lazy. That's really the only reason. It's 2 more tools to get out, 2 more tools to put away, so I usually tend to wing it. But yeah, that's not actually the best way to do it. Alright, so there's 1 and 2. Alright, so that's all of my holes drilled. Ta-da! Okay, so now I'm going to turn off my rotary tool. I'm going to, I think, go grab my light clamp, so be right back. New light, but this clamp does not like my table. This clamp and my table are not friendly.
This clamp wasn't made for you, Ed.
It was not, and it's annoying because I love the light. The light's fabulous.
Nobody has to drink because it's not sale yet. Just because I'm singing.
Alright, we'll see how long that lasts before it decides to go south again. So, now that I have this all drilled, I have all kinds of rough spots and burrs. Okay, so every time you pop your drill through your metal, you're gonna get a little, and you can see, okay, see, this is what happens when you don't stamp before you drill. Okay, this is where my drill has walked over, and my spacing is off. So every time you go through the metal, you're gonna get what's called a little burr on the back side of your metal, and that's really not good when you are using thread, because that's something that's going to cut your thread pretty easily. So I'm just going to take my 320 grit on the back of my piece, and I'm just going to sand those down. This is going to change the texture, that's why I'm doing it on the back. Alright, and that should do a pretty good job of taking those down. If you still feel burrs after that, you can go at that with your steel wool. So this is my front, this is my back. Also, I don't need now all of my markings, so I'm just going to grab a little bit of paper towel and some rubbing alcohol, and oh, now we're preloading drinks for the sale. That bodes well in a way that it really does not bode well. All right, so now it's nice and clean. That's
Depends
the
who you're
front.
asking.
That's
and
the
what.
back. That's true. So now we're going to grab some thread and our needle. So I'm going to take my fire line. It's going to take more thread than you think, so I'm going to cut myself a full about 5 feet of thread, even though, you know, it's not a very large piece. This is one of those pieces that it's difficult to add a thread gracefully, okay? If you have to add a thread, it's really hard to do it without it just looking heinously awkward. So I would just start with more thread than you think you're going to need. So I've got about 5 feet of fire line. I'm going to go ahead and thread that into my size 10 beading needle. So I'm just going to drop that needle right over the end of my thread, like so. See, now my light just is being grouchy about its positioning.
Rude.
It is rude. It's very rude. Disrespectful light of the fact that I'm trying to finish this broadcast in like a reasonable amount of time so we can get to the sale. Okay, that's better. Okay, so I've got my thread in my needle. Now I'm going to grab my metal piece, and I'm going to start by just putting my needle up. I'm not. Bad Allison, no cookie.
No.
Nope. Let's try that again, shall we?
But what if I give you a cookie?
No, we're not allowed to have cookies. I mean, for a variety of reasons, frankly.
I don't think any of them are good enough.
I think the migraine one is at least good
That's
enough.
fair.
Okay, so I'm actually going to start this again. Take my needle, and I'm going to put one of my size 11 seed beads on my needle. Then I'm going to put my needle through the first hole in my metal. I'm going to pull my thread almost all the way through, but not all the way through. Okay, I want to leave myself a little tail here. And then I'm going to go down through that seed bead and tighten everything up. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm building a foundation row for my fringe, and for those of you who were on the brick stitch pendant tutorial last week, you will probably recognize this as brick stitch. So, one bead on my needle, go through the next hole, pull it all the way through, and then take your needle back down through that seed bead like so, and pull through all of your thread. Give it a little shimmy, make sure it's nice and tight, and so now we have 2 foundation beads for our fringe. Now we're going to start another one. We're going to do 1 bead through the hole, like so, pull all the way through, and then down. Now I've got 3 beads in my foundation row. All right, so we continue on until we've got all of the beads in our foundation row on. So how close together do you have to put your fringes? Doesn't really matter. Totally up to you. I mean, I like to space mine, you know, disregarding this little irregularity I have. You know, I like to space them so that the beads are basically touching each other. So if I'm using size 11s, obviously that's going to be closer together than if I'm using something bigger like size 6s or something like 4mm crystals. But you can place them as far apart as you want. Close together, you are going to be limited a little bit just by this, literally the space you have on your foundation piece. Let's see, other things you could use besides metal and polymer clay. You could do this in leather, and you could jab some holes through a leather piece and make a really cool fringe earring or pendant with leather as a base instead of metal or polymer clay. You could do this off of, you know, a larger piece of copper. You can make like a fringed bangle bracelet, and of course if you made 2 of them, you could have a really badass pair of fringed earrings. Okay, so once again, almost done. So bead goes on the needle, needle goes through the hole, all the way through, and then through the bead. If I were doing this in leather, what thickness would I use? I would just want something, I think that's thick enough that it could hold itself flat, that it doesn't want to like curl up, and that you don't need to worry about ripping through it when you do the fringing. So what thickness that exactly is probably depends on the type of leather that you have. Like I feel like something like a soft deerskin would not be a good idea for this. Something more like a slightly thicker cowhide, like maybe not as thick as you would use for a cuff bracelet, but it's got to have a little bit of body so that it'll just, you know, it'll keep its shape. It won't just kind of curl in on the way to the beads. Okay, so now I'm finished my foundation row, and now I'm ready to start my fringes. So I'm going to start my fringes right here in my last bead of my foundation row. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to make shorter fringes than I did on my prototype. All right, I'm going to make them fairly stubby little bits. You can expand the fringes as long as you want. Okay, so it's really just a question of how many beads do you want to put on each fringe. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go with 4 seed beads, a bugle bead, 4 seed beads, and a crystal. So yeah, significantly shorter than what I did on my prototype, but once again, it's just a matter of scale. It's just a matter of time. How many beads do you want to put on it? Works the same no matter what. Okay, so this is my stubby little fringe that I'm doing for tonight. So I've got 4 seed beads, a bugle bead, 4 seed beads. That is 4, right? Yes, and a crystal. I'm going to pull that all the way up to rest against my foundation bead. Now I'm going to string on 1 more seed bead. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to thread it then back up through my crystal and all of my fringe, including my foundation bead. So I'm going to go all the way up the top, but notice I skipped that seed bead, the very last one that I strung on. That's because that's going to be the stopper bead for our fringe. So I'm just going to pull this all the way through. Like so. And there you go. That is fringe number 1. Now I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go down through the next foundation bead. Pull all the way through. And now I'm going to repeat. Now, you can do cool things with the fringe. You can make these fringes, you know, descending lengths. You can do patterns. You can do all sorts of cool stuff. I'm not doing any of that tonight because, once again, time. That's all a matter of just how do you arrange the beads that you've chosen to put on the fringes. And there are patterns and patterns galore out there for that sort of thing. I'm more interested tonight in just kind of getting you solid on the technique of how to do the fringe rather than all of the kind of artistic embellishments that you can play with. But please feel free to do cool artsy fartsy stuff, because that's really, of course, where the true fun, I think, comes in, is doing all of the embellishments and the extra bits and bobs and things. But you can't do that until you have the basic technique. Okay, so I've strung the same pattern for my fringe. I've got 4 seed beads, a bugle bead, 4 seed beads, a crystal, and then a seed bead. I'm going to skip that seed bead. Okay, so that seed bead needs to get out of the range of my needle, and I'm going to go back up. And by up, I mean towards your metal piece through all of these beads, including the bead on that foundation row. Okay, so all the way through everything, including that foundation bead. Come on, like so. All right, so I've gone up through everything. I'm going to pull. Now, if you have a situation like this, where you've tightened everything up, but your fringe is hanging out too low, like it's not up against your foundation bead, just pinch that bottom seed bead, the one that you're as below your crystal, and hold that and just pull on your working thread. And as long as you're holding just the seed bead and not the thread, that will go ahead and help you tighten that up. So now we continue with the rest of our fringes. So these all just work the same way. We're going to go down through that foundation bead, pull all the way, then we string. Whatever our pattern is. For me, it's going to be 4, 1, 4, and a crystal. So 4 seed beads, 1 bugle bead, 4 seed beads, crystal, and then ending with the seed bead. Oh, and I will show you a little fancy schmancy thing when I get to the middle one. 3, 4, crystal, 1 seed bead. Alright, so that's my whole fringe, like so. And once again, skip that last seed bead, go back up through everything else. Like so. And pull that all the way up. So this is my very beginning tail. It's just kind of wanting to invade my fringes. So I just want to get that out of there. I'm going to tie off to that at the very end. All right, so those are my 3 fringes. Now I'm going to go down through the next foundation bead. Okay, and now we're going to repeat the same thing. So I'm just going to keep making my fringes, but when I get to my next fringe, which is my center one, I'm going to show you a little fun variation that you can use if you want. So again, that was 4 seed beads, 2, 3, 4, 1 bugle bead, 4 seed beads, crystal, and then a seed bead. So the technique of fringing is pretty much the same no matter what you're doing. You always have at the terminus, at the end of your fringe, you're always going to have 1 bead that is going to be your ending bead, the bead that holds everything on. That's the bead that you're going to skip. So once again, that's my fringe pattern. So I'm going to pull that all the way up. Then I'm going to skip that terminal bead there and just go back up through everything, including the bead on that foundation row. Aha. Alright, like so, and then we're going to pull it all the way through. And now we're going to do our next fringe. So this is our middle fringe. Alright, so this is the one we're going to do something a little fun and different. I'm going to string the same pattern So I'm going to string 4 seed beads. And a bugle bead, 4 seed beads, and a crystal. And then after the crystal, oh, for goodness sake, after the crystal, I'm going to string 3 seed beads instead of 1. And this is going to enable me to do just a slightly fancier finish to the end of my fringe, which is called a picot, spelled P-I-C-O-T. So here I have my 4 seed beads, my bugle bead, 4 seed beads, crystal, and 3 seed beads. Pull that all the way up to your metal piece. Now we're going to skip all 3 of these. So all 3 of these are terminal beads in this case, and then just go back up through all of your beads, including your foundation bead, like so. Pull it all the way up, and give it a nice little shimmy to tighten it, and what's going to happen is your 3 seed beads are going to make this cute little triangular finish here, which is called a picot, because it's similar to that same shape that you can create when you are tatting lace. So if you want to do something a little bit more exciting, you can do a little picot at the end instead of just your single bead. So now I'm just on my last 4 fringes to finish this project. So that's going to be back to the same pattern of 4, 1, 4 crystal, and then a single terminal bead. Other fun things you could do instead of the middle bead on that picot, you could actually do a little wire wrapped piece. So again, the possibilities really are endless. And once you know the base technique for this, which is what we're doing in this tutorial, hopefully it'll be easier for you to see and recognize when you see things that are just variations of this. This reminds me, I should do branched fringe as a tutorial as well, because that's a fun one. Okay, so I have my whole pattern strung up. We have, again, now we're back to just our regular, so 4, 1, 4 crystal, and then 1 as a terminal bead. So once again, I'm just going to skip that terminal bead. Okay, that terminal bead goes away, and I'm going to go back up through all the rest of these. Now, if you are doing this and you go back up painstakingly through all of your fringe beads and you pull everything tight and all of those beads fall off of your needle onto your work surface, I guarantee you the reason that happened is because you didn't skip your terminal bead. You actually went around it, or sorry, went back through it, and so then therefore you just backtracked your thread through all the beads, and that's why everything fell off. So make sure you don't go through your terminal bead that second time. So then down through the next in my foundation row, and then we go back to, now let's talk for a second about what's the fastest way to string seed beads. If you have a bead mat, one of those little Velux kind of squishy mats, one of the easiest way to string seed beads is actually to put them on that mat, and then you can literally scoop them up off of the mat with your needle. Since I don't have a squishy mat, I'm putting them in my fingers, and then I'm just kind of rolling them around to find the holes in each of them and just catch them with my needle, and that is usually the fastest way for me. So you can just catch it through your fingers. That's 1, 2, 3. Sometimes you get lucky and you catch more than one at once. 4, and then we got the crystal, and then your single. Again, pull that all the way up, skip your terminal bead, and then go up through everything else. So the pinchy way of stringing seed beads works for me. I don't have any issues with pinch in my hands though. If you do, getting a Velux bead mat, and they're very inexpensive. I think I have them on our Etsy site for like $2 a piece or maybe $3 a piece, something like that. and other sellers probably have them even less expensive than that. But getting one of those and then scooping your beads off of it is a really good way where you don't have to do as much pinching. You still have to pinch your needle, but you don't have to pinch your beads. If you find that this motion, grabbing your needle, pinching your needle, and pulling it through is painful, don't forget you can always grab a pliers. Okay, you can grab a tool to help you with that. Tools are your friend. Tools help make life easier. 1, 2, 3, 4. Crystal, this is my second to last fringe. I'm going to show you how to finish this, and then we are going to take just a second to make this into a functional necklace with our chain and our clasp. So again, there's my whole fringe. Skip that terminal bead, back up through everything else. So this is the Wednesday evening Beading Dreams stream. That means following this tutorial, about 30 minutes after the tutorial, which is probably going to be between 7:30 and 7:45, we're going to be doing a live merchandise sale. I have lots of fun gemstone beads for you tonight. I also have a whole pile of $5 mini strands. All right, there's some good stuff on these $5 mini strands. Like seriously, this one is carnelian with an antique agate bead. All right, I have all sorts of $5 mini strands, and then I've got some bargain basement 8-inch strands, and I've got some 16-inch strands, which are not necessarily new, but which I feel like need a little bit of love. They haven't been on stream in a while, and they're sad. So I've got some 16-inch gemstone strands for you as well tonight. So that's going to be between 7:30 and 7:45 here on the Beading Dream stream. That is, of course, our Wednesday evening live merchandise sale. Also, this week is a Zoom Crafty Cocktail Hour week. That means on Friday, you will not find us on Facebook. You will not find us on Twitch. You'll find us on Zoom with our Crafty Cocktail Hour. It's a great time to hang out with some fun peeps, do some crafting if you need some help with any projects. Heather and I will both be on to help you with whatever you might need. And whether it's one of our projects or another project that you've been working with, we're usually pretty good at kind of troubleshooting and sussing out what exactly is going wrong for you. And of course, it's just a fun, good time with a bunch of cool people. So that's going to be Friday at 6 p.m. on Zoom. If you Zoomed with us before, your credentials are going to be the same. If you are new to the Zooming, just email us beadingdreamsdallas@gmail.com. We'll get you those credentials by email. Okay, so on this last fringe, I'm going up through all my beads except my foundation bead. Okay, I'm not going up through my foundation bead on this last one. That's just so I can have a neater tie off. So what I should have now are my beginning tail and the remains of my thread. Also, I did cut way too much thread. I've got a solid 3 feet left, so I could have cut significantly less than I did, but once again, better too much than not enough. Now I'm going to tie this together in a surgeon's knot. So I'm going to take my right hand thread, cross it in front of, she says, okay, well, we're trimming my right hand thread because it's really long. Nobody wants to. Okay, so I'm going to take my right hand thread, I'm going to cross it in front of my left hand thread, and I'm going to put the end through the middle twice. So once, twice, and I'm going to pull that all the way down, and it should go in between your foundation bead and the first bead of your fringe. And then we're going to repeat. We're going to take the thread that's now in your left hand, cross it in front of the thread that's in your right hand, like so. And then once again, you're going to pass that end through the middle twice. Once, twice, pull down nice and tight. Give it a little shimmy. Shimmy is one of my favorite techniques with seed bead work, just because it's one of the best ways to get your tension good though. So shimmy for me literally just means take the thread, pull it, and wiggle it. Then I'm going to grab some hypo cement if I have it. I did not put it on the supply list. Oops. Also, I just found my tools after I had lost them for a while, and my hypo cement, it looks like, has been having some wild and crazy adventures. I don't know if I can get this open. More of my vice grips. Okay, lacking the appropriate tools, seriously. Okay, this was not supposed to be the most difficult part of this tutorial, just saying. See, and the thing about the hypo cement is the tube is so fragile that like there's a really good chance if you abuse it too much trying to get it to open, you're just gonna break your tube in half, which is really messy. Okay, so now I have my hypo cement. That's my GS hypo cement, watch crystal cement, and I'm just gonna dab that onto that little knot, and then I'm gonna pop the stylus back in there so that hopefully it doesn't continue to explode. And while that is drying, it's just going to take about 5 minutes or so to dry, I'm going to go ahead and put this necklace together. So that means I'm going to need to grab my 2 pairs of chain nose pliers. Alright, so 2 pairs of chain nose pliers. I'm going to need 4 jump rings. Okay, 4 jump rings. And 2 pieces of chain. How long do the pieces of chain need to be? That's going to be however long you want your necklace minus the distance from here to here, which we're going to ballpark at a 1/2 inch, and minus the size of your clasp. That's about another 1/2 inch. And also minus your jump rings, okay? Because your jump rings do add some length. They don't add a ton of length, but they do add a bit. So we're going to call that another 1/2 inch. So I've got about 1.5 inches of added length that's going into my necklace tonight. I want to do a 16-inch necklace, so that means if I've got 1.5 inches of added length, that means I need 14.5 inches of chain. If we're going to divvy that in 2, that means I need 2 pieces of chain, each of which are 7.25 inches long. So I'm going to trim those, make sure they're even. And then assembly is pretty simple. So you're going to take your chain nose pliers, you're going to grab one of your jump rings right next to the opening with your chain nose pliers. You're going to take your second chain nose pliers, you're going to grab on the other side of the opening. Now notice I am grabbing this ring with the sides of my chain nose pliers. If you go in there with the tips of your pliers, you're not going to get a whole lot of grip, and it is extremely likely that your pliers are going to slip. After I do that, I'm just going to twist my jump ring open. So what I've done here is I've created an opening that I can use to attach to my pendant, but I have not destroyed the circle of the jump ring. So I'm going to drop my pendant onto my jump ring. Oh! But here we've hit a snag because the drill bit that I used is too small for those thick jump rings. So we're just going to make a quick on-the-fly change, and I'm going to grab 2 jump rings that are thinner. So it's always a good idea to have different sizes of jump rings on hand. Now, if I didn't have smaller jump rings available, there we go. Ta-da! I'm going to put that through my pendant. I'm going to drop my chain onto my ring like so, and then I'm going to make sure to close my jump ring up securely. So I'm once again going to grab with 2 chain nose pliers, and I want to close it until I feel those 2 edges scrape against each other. I shouldn't be able to see any light through the opening of that jump ring. But anyway, if I had not had smaller jump rings on hand, I could have taken my drill bit to that hole again, and I could have either just put a bigger drill bit in my rotary tool, drill that hole a little bit bigger, or if you don't have a bigger drill bit handy, what you can do is you can put your drill back in there, and you can just kind of gently sort of just push it like north, south, east, and west. Now when you're doing that, you want to be careful not to bend it, okay? You really want to think about keeping it vertical, because if you bend it too much, you're going to snap your drill bit. But just that little bit of kind of, you know, pushing in a star-shaped pattern a little bit will widen out your hole, usually large enough to get whatever you're trying to get through it, if it's just that little bit of a lack. Okay, so then I've got my pliers. So notice even when I've got to grab with the tip of one, just because of space, I'm still grabbing with the side of the other. So I want to have as much contact with my pliers as possible with my pliers to my jump ring. Okay, so that is attached that to my chain. And then I'm going to go ahead and take, hey look, this conveniently already open jump ring from a minute ago. And pop that onto the end of my chain, like so. Once again, make sure you close it so you can't see any light. Same with the other one. Open, attach to the other end of your chain. You just grab your chain, drop that on there, close it up. All right, and then S-hook clasps like this. The way that these babies function is you just want to open up both sides a little bit, like so. And then you can drop those onto those larger rings that you just added there. And then what we want to do is we want to make sure that we take one side of our S-hook and we want to close it, okay? This is what keeps your S-hook actually on your necklace. Otherwise, it's really just going to fall off. And then this becomes your on and off side. And the cool thing about a really petite S-hook like this is you can sometimes even clip it through your chain, which just gives you a little bit of, you know, adjustability for like, oh shoot, this is too long. For the top I'm wearing, you can actually bring that over and just hook it through your chain, which is sometimes nice. Then the very last thing I need to do to make this a wearable necklace is I need to finally get rid of all of these extra 2 threads. So I'm just going to take my thread snippers okay, really? Which all of a sudden refuse to snip, like literally, they won't move. So that's exciting. Yep, no idea, but yeah, completely useless for any kind of scissoring anymore. Luckily for me, I have backup scissors. So I'm gonna take my backup scissors and I'm gonna snip off my end just nice and close to my fringe. And that, peoples of the Beading Dream stream, is my beaded fringe pendant is what I meant to say. Goodness. All right, so that's it. That is our beaded fringe pendant. You can do this on leather. You could do this on polymer clay. Of course, I did it on metal tonight, and you don't have to feel limited to the length of your fringes like I did. Once again, that was just for time to get us done in a reasonable amount of time on this stream, because of course in just 30 minutes, it's going to be right around 7:45 p.m. Central Time, we will be doing a live merchandise sale here on the Beading Dreams stream. So I'm Allison from Beading Dreams in Dallas, Texas. For anybody who doesn't know us, we're an actual brick and mortar retail bead store. See you in a minute, Lori. Well, 30 minutes. We are here on Lovers Lane in Dallas, and we are open to feed your need to bead 6 days a week. We're here Monday through Saturday from 1 to 6. If you're not local in Dallas, you can find us on the Beading Dream stream. Yes, that is twitch.tv/Beading Dream. 5 times a week with complimentary tutorials. We stream Wednesday through Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Time, plus Thursdays at noon, and we do live merchandise sales every Wednesday and Saturday night at 7:30 p.m. So that means a couple of things. Number one, we'll be back on this channel, twitch.tv/Beading Dream, with a new tutorial. Tomorrow, Thursday at noon, we're going to be doing our macrame cabochon necklace. So this is a little tutorial on how to create a macrame holder for a cabochon. You can also turn this into a pendant if you're so inclined. We may or may not have time to do that variation, but I'll try and show that to y'all tomorrow at lunch. And then, of course, we'll be back on this channel, twitch.tv/Beading Dream, even sooner than that, in just 30 minutes with our live merchandise sale. So if you're going to hang out with us for the live merchandise sale, don't forget to pour yourself a cocktail if you're so inclined. Get comfy, get cozy, and get ready to enjoy some bead retail therapy right in the comfort of your living room office, or wherever you happen to be watching the Beading Dream stream. So that's my cue to peace out for 30 minutes, get everything ready for the sale, and I'll see you all back on this channel, twitch.tv/Beading Dream, in just about half an hour.